The Field of 68 Media Network presents Red is the New Orange, a Syracuse basketball podcast.
Vince intercepts a pass, breakaway for the freshman guard, he flies and slams! Aerial assault from Judah Mintz.
Looking to go back door to Bell, they get it to a near corner three, knocks it down! Chris Bell, the sharpshooter.
Bringing you everything you need to know out of the 315.
Up top, Williams surges ahead, up with the right hand and in. A pretty up and under move from Benny Williams to beat his man.
Over to Taylor, he skips into the lane, puts up a floater, it drops in.
Let's get it started with your hosts, Ian Unsworth and Johnny Gadamowitz.
What a comeback win it was for the Orange. 77-69 over the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Johnny Gadamowitz, Ian Unsworth with you. Tough weekend to be an Irish fan after they dropped the college football national championship and fall at the JMA Dome to the Cuse back on Saturday. Make sure you give us a follow. We're over on Twitter at F68_Cuse, part of the Field of 68 podcast network. They've got you covered for whichever school you choose. Whoever you grew up rooting for, wherever you went to school, whatever your college basketball program is, chances are there's a Field of 68 pod on it. Make sure you go check it out and check out the daily content that our good friends Jeff Goodman, Rob Doster are doing a great job of putting out everything you need to know in the college basketball world. Ian, from a Syracuse standpoint, what a win this was. It was a Saturday game going up against NFL playoffs. I'll be honest, watched those first 5 minutes and figured, all right, I don't know how much the rest of this game I'm going to be watching. But Syracuse cuts it to 9 at the break and then puts up 44 in the second half, holds Notre Dame to only 27 en route to really a much-needed win to get back to 500.
It was a complete role reversal from the first to second half. In the first half, Notre Dame, specifically Marcus Burton, was the aggressor. I mean, it was Marcus Burton versus Syracuse, and Marcus Burton came pretty darn close to outscoring Syracuse in the first half. In the second half, he went 2 of 10 from the field. Syracuse held him to 6 points, and J.J. Starling and Eddie Lampkin got going. Starling has 15 in the second half. Lampkin didn't attempt a field goal in the first half. He picks up 13. And as we've seen over the season, he picks up his energy once the crowd picks up his energy, once the rest of the team picks up his energy. Lampkin's the last to get the motor running. So it's great to have J.J. Starling back. You saw the difference he made in the second half with his aggressiveness, his willing to drive to the basket. Syracuse also just ponied up and played defense. If you listen to Red Autry's post-game press conference, or if you read some of the articles, some of the quotes, he said that the team made a decision to start guarding better. About, halfway through the first half, someone in that huddle said enough is enough. I don't know who it is, but my goodness, enough was enough.
And they figured it out from there. I think for me, one of the big takeaways here is you don't have to be a fantastic rebounding team if you can rebound in big moments, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you don't need to win the battle on the glass all the time. If you know when it's crunch time, you can bear down and get after it. And for me, you go to the under 2-minute mark in the second half, and there was that stretch where Syracuse had about 2 or 3 misses consecutively, but was able to shave more than 60 seconds off the clock because of a couple of key offensive rebounds. And you saw Eddie Lampkin, before I think eventually it was a shooting foul that put the Orange at the line, he was more fired up than anybody because he was involved down low. He turned on the Jets in the second half. And for Lampkin, you felt like this was a game that he really needed. Coming into the year, he was supposed to be kind of one of the guys and still is supposed to be one of the guys. But I don't think his year has been on par with what a lot of Orange fans had hoped, considering the pedigree he brought to this program, the fact that he's been around the block a couple of times. I was really happy to see Eddie Lampkin give that emphatic roar of emotion, knowing that, okay, we've got this home win locked up. And now you hope that moving forward, he can kind of build on it and be that physical interior presence that's capable of scoring double figures on a game in, game out basis like we know that he can.
I don't think anyone's expecting greatness from Lampkin at this point, but against Notre Dame, a team that is not physical inside, a team that doesn't have an imposing presence down there, you got to get the ball to him earlier and more often. There are times when it doesn't look like he wants the ball necessarily. It doesn't look like he is getting in the post, trying to get position. And so some of that dictated the Orange's start to the game, which was so slow and so lethargic and so stagnant on the offensive end. The ball didn't get from side to side. There weren't a whole lot of good shot opportunities, let alone good shots taken. Once Syracuse started getting the ball from side to side, after burning their second timeout, Jaquan Carlos was in the game. And I think that made a difference. Lucas Taylor was in the game. And even though Burton kept scoring in that first half, Taylor slowed him down just a little bit, at least got him to cool off before halftime. And those two also got the offense rolling just from a ball movement perspective. They drove and kick. Carlos hit a three. Taylor hit one and then got to the basket. Those guys made a difference off the bench in the first half.
Well, that drive and kick game is so big because time and time again this year, I feel like I've been watching this team and it bothers me, and I'm sure you'd agree, the lack of kind of off-ball movement that there is.
Yeah.
There are times when, like the start to this game, these offensive lows, it feels like they are rooted in a lack of off-ball movement. And when you get a guy like Carlos in the game who is so bouncy and can draw that double team down low to ignite the drive and kick game, it really can open things up. And that adds to the overall flow of the offense. I just think it is puzzling to me a little bit that we're still seeing slow starts like this one and these spurts where there is just nothing offensively. And as encouraging as it is that they figured it out and the defense got key stops, you wonder why here we are in mid to late January and we're still kind of seeing these extended periods of play where it just feels like there's no offensive identity.
Well, can I be honest here? We've talked about the starting lineup and, it doesn't matter who starts, doesn't matter who starts, doesn't matter who starts. It does kind of matter who starts. When your starting five can't score, that is a problem. That is a bit of a problem because against better teams, it's going to come back and bite you in the backside. It didn't against Notre Dame because Notre Dame's scoring amounted to one dude in the first 10 minutes. I don't think Braden Shrewsbury ever really caught his rhythm like he did over in South Bend. Tay Davis had a terrible game. He was, ugh. There were a lot of shots that Tay Davis took that went in the first time, but also in this game in the Dome, it looked like he had no confidence taking them. Some pull-up mid-range jumpers, some ugly drives. Once Burton got taken out of the equation in the second half, you could kind of tell that Syracuse slowly but surely was working their way back in the game. But in those first 4 or 5 minutes, you need someone to stop the bleeding. J.J. Starling is great, but he can't be the guy for 40 minutes. You can't ask many college basketball players to go out there and be a one-man show for 40 minutes. You'd much rather have J.J. Starling save his best for the stretch, like he did against Notre Dame, when he's going in there and pretty much playing kamikaze, throwing the ball up on the rim, trying to draw contact, or ending up, flipping it back outside and hoping for the best.
Right.
But over those first 5-10 minutes, you need to rely on other people to score. Jair Davis doesn't look as comfortable. I think people are starting to figure him out a little bit. Elijah Moore is getting there, but again, isn't a guy you can expect to take the ball off the jump. So where do we go back? We go back to Lampkin. And if he is going to be the last guy to get engaged after the crowd starts roaring, after his teammates are building a run, I mean, things aren't going to go well for Syracuse. And I think we've kind of danced around this all year to the tune of it doesn't matter who starts. But now that the slow starts are happening over and over again, and more often than not, once you play better teams in the conference, even though the conference kind of stinks with an exclamation point, this is going to keep happening, home or away.
One final point on this Notre Dame game before we look ahead to the Clemson Tigers midweek game for the Orange this week. This was a game also, Ian, where I think the depth really favored Syracuse.
Yeah.
If I were to ask you how many bench points Notre Dame had, what would your guess be?
Like 5.
Zero.
Huh?
Nobody who wasn't in the Notre Dame starting lineup scored. Only five Fighting Irish players had points on the day. Now, granted, four of them were in double figures. That's where a majority of the offense came from. But again, you compare that to Syracuse, and you get a healthy 20 minutes from Carlos, and Mastorovich is involved, and Kyle Cuff is doing his thing.
Kyle Cuff made 10 free throws.
Yeah, he got to the line a
And
ton.
Mastorovich was on the floor in the final minutes, getting those rebounds and deflections on both ends.
So again, while Syracuse's talent might not be super top heavy in terms of, guys who can really put on a show, it is a widespread array of talent and different guys can step up on different nights. And again, we preface all of this with the fact that still no Donnie Freeman in this game. So you needed other guys to step up and other guys did step up. Now, how does that translate to Clemson? We'll see. Tigers are a little bit of a different beast. You can make the case this Clemson squad is the second best team in the ACC right now.
Ugh.
13-4 overall, 5-1 in the conference. Coming off an overtime win against Pitt, a game that on the surface level you'd figure Clemson probably wouldn't have needed the extra period to take down the Panthers, but going up to the Pete they did, 78-75. Clemson obviously coming off an Elite Eight appearance last year. They lost some guys, no more PJ Hall, no more Joe Girard, who Orange fans know well, but a lot of familiar faces returning too. Chase Hunter is still there. Ian Shefflin is still there. And it's a Brad Brownell-led squad that definitely can go with the best of them in the conference, at least with what we've seen so far.
Yeah, the only thing about the changes for Clemson, I think they've gotten worse on the inside. You lose PJ Hall, that's bound to happen. But I think they've gotten just as good, if not better, on the perimeter. I mean, Chase Hunter's been playing basketball now for 6 years in college. Like, he is about as seasoned as salty as they get. I don't envision JJ Starling having a lot of fun on Wednesday night. It's just not going to be one of those games where you can rely on him to carry the scoring load. It's not going to happen. So when it comes to scoring, I don't know what's going to happen. Like, I don't exactly know where Syracuse is going to get it from. I think Shefflin is good enough defensively to hold his own against Lampkin. But they also have an import in 6'11" Victor Locken, transfer from Cincinnati, who will also be down there. And Clemson will still play that too big style that they did last year. So Davis and Lampkin, again, will have their work cut out for them. And against a smaller Notre Dame front line, if the juice isn't there right away, will it be there against Clemson? I don't know.
Another name that Orange fans might ring a bell on this Clemson squad, Jaden Zachary, Boston.
Yeah, that's the other perimeter defender who's been excellent. He's been really good.
Really good defensively, can shoot it as well. And another one of these guys that has just been around the block now as a grad student in what I guess it would be his fifth year of college basketball after spending much of his career with the Eagles of BC. So we'll see. This is another one of those games, Ian, that we go into not expecting a win. But at a certain point, if the Orange want to turn the tide of this season, 3-4 through their first 7 ACC games, they're going to have to win games that we don't really expect them to. And I think this represents a prime opportunity to do that. Is it going to be difficult? Yes. Would you love to have Donnie Freeman back? Yes. Do we know if Donnie Freeman is going to be back? No, we don't. But if
honestly, I don't think so.
I would lean no. I would lean no as well. So again, it goes back to if you're getting a minimal offensive day out of JJ Starling and you still don't have Donnie Freeman, do you have enough pure offensive firepower to counter the Tigers? I think the answer there is probably no.
Yeah, last year Clemson didn't have much of a sweat against Syracuse. You just struggle to look at this team and really think that they stand up to the top of the ACC. That's just where we are at this point. There's not much hope to be quite frank, especially on the road.
Well, coming off a win, they've got momentum on their side. We'll see how these next couple games fare. Next 4 games for the Orange at Clemson, then home against Pitt, a trip out west to take on Stanford and Cal, obviously newly minted ACC members. So that's kind of your next 2 weeks in a nutshell. Even if Clemson doesn't go too well, you'd figure, okay, you're back home to take on the Panthers and then winnable games against Stanford and Cal on the road. Again, on the road.
Stanford just beat Carolina, though.
That is true
So
as well. So who knows? Feels like it's the kind of year in the conference where it's tough to get a read on, and as you mentioned, Ian, a lot of teams really sort of underperforming what we thought maybe they would look like in 20.
last point on Clemson here, Johnny.
Yep.
Remember Chucky Hepburn going nuts from three?
Yep.
Yeah, Chase Hunter's shooting 45% from behind the arc this year. So if he gets hot, again, he's not the type of guy you think about really scoring the basketball in the past, but he's averaging almost 18 points a game this year. If he gets hot, again, early, it could be blown out of the water.
Clemson as a team is 39% from 3-point land. They're also 46% from the field, so not too shabby offensively. The Orange and the Tigers down at Little John. It is coming up Wednesday night, 7 p.m. tip on the ACC network. Should be a fun one. Hopefully Syracuse can hang with Clemson on the road. We'll be back at the end of the week to break it all down and look ahead to that aforementioned next matchup against the Pitt Panthers, which will be at the JMA Dome Saturday afternoon. But more on that at the end of the week. Until then, enjoy the Clemson game on Wednesday night, and we'll talk to you